everybody. Welcome to Media Dialogues in 2023. On the show today, a deep dive into the world of digital audio streaming with Swedish giant Spotify. The world's largest audio streamer will complete 4 years in India next month, in a few days from now, actually. From innovating on pricing for Spotify Premium, that's the subscription service, to evangelizing it as a medium to advertisers, Spotify has had to adapt to the unique needs of the Indian market. And that's, of course, true of most consumer tech and entertainment behemoths. To understand the latest trends and to hear what's next in the India story, I'm talking today to Gustav Gyllenhammar. He's the Vice President Markets and Subscriber Growth, and Amarjit Singh Batra, GM or General Manager South Asia, Middle East and Africa. Gentlemen, it's lovely to see you. And thank you very much for coming into the studio. Let's ease into this conversation. There's so much to talk about, but let's talk about India rap to begin with. So we know that Arijit was the most streamed artist. We know a song called Excuses was the most streamed song. We know the most streamed album, I think, was Moosewala's. What does all this mean, besides just good for us to know as consumers about what our pop culture, the zeitgeist was in 2022?
Yes, Anuradha, let me talk a little bit first about the global water cooler moment that is Spotify Wrapped. And Amarjit can fill in on sort of all the amazing details that we know about Wrapped in India. And this year we had hundreds of millions of consumers and millions of creators coming together. And for a couple of days in December, it feels like the internet stops and people talk about music and who was the biggest artist and what did you listen to the most and so on. And if you look at global internet and music last year, you see a couple of trends that have become bigger and bigger for every year. You see a much bigger diversity of artists occupying the global stage. We have Bad Bunny from Puerto Rico become the global most streamed artist 3 years in a row, which is something that was unthinkable if you go back 10, 15, 20 years when music globally was mostly a Western export product. But with the advent of streaming, it's become a much more of a global phenomenon with artists and music traveling from market to market. Right. And we also see that in the India numbers that we saw from last year.
Absolutely. And I think the big thing that we've seen in India is that India music is local. So if you look at some of these songs and artists.
There was just a British indie band, I think, that was in that top 10 most streamed.
Yeah, no, I think the good thing about India is that people have a lot of global citizens here. People like music around the world. So you have a large population which listens to English music. They listen to music all around the world. But at the core, you would have seen that most of the artists, I think, are from India, or they're listening to different languages within India. Yeah.
But Punjabi is right up there, isn't it?
But Punjabi actually, I think Punjabi has been there as one of the key languages, I think,
even
in music,
the two film songs have a Punjabi,
absolutely,
the two film songs, there are 3 Hindi film songs, but 2 of them have a very strong Punjabi language and linguistic tonal.
Absolutely, but you must have seen that that's a trend which is happening in Bollywood anyway. A lot of Punjabi songs come on to Bollywood, and I think that's been a trend happening for the last few years. It's going around the world much faster because Punjabi has a much wider global diaspora. Acceptance and diaspora. But I think the interesting thing in the trend, if you look at the rap, I think is also the increase in amount of Indian artists who are not film music. And I think that is very interesting because that shows that this market is emerging. And I think now we are completing 4 years in India now. And I think this is a great way to end the year where you reflect on who has been the artist, who has performed well, what have you listened to? Because in the end, sometimes we all listen to all the time, but we don't know what did we listen to. So I think there's a lot of curiousness among people.
I just want a quick question on independent artists, because they're at least, I think, 4 or 5 out of the top 10 most streamed songs, right? The question is, India has had independent artists sporadically over the years, but they don't last long, or they just hang in there, or they get co-opted by the film music or the film industry, isn't it? Do you think there's something different in 2023, in a digitally streamed audio music industry?
Yes, of course, there's a trend which is changing. Film music in India has always been up there. I think there are about 10 songs which happen to be in films earlier. It's come down to 3 to 4 songs now, and I think most of them are also in the end maybe as not integrated into the films. So the But if you look at the artists and creators in this country, I think they're growing dramatically. The increase of social media, opportunities like Spotify to distribute music around the world. We have 456 million users around the world.
Will they see greater success and perhaps longer or longevity in terms of their career compared to independent artists, you know, in the decades past?
It's already happening, because I think the idea is sometimes when you have to plug into a larger system. I think since Spotify came in a few years back, the artists have been able to integrate into Spotify and get into playlists around the world. So now somebody sitting in US or somebody sitting in UK or somebody sitting in Germany, if they're listening to a certain type of music, Indian artists are coming up in their playlist. So the discovery of Indian artists by global users have actually increased dramatically.
And they are doing concerts and stuff like
absolutely. And that means that some of them are now going out and doing concerts in UK and different places. I think that's here to stay. In fact, not only here to stay, this will increase, because we are also running programs, and we can talk about it, where we are trying to promote Indian artists who are up and coming. It's only India which is unique with film music. Around the world, it's all about artists. And I think Spotify, artists love Spotify because, Spotify allows them to kind of help them analyze their music, help them to know where their people are listening, help them with playlists and stuff. And so that's
monetize?
Monetize, of course. Yeah, I think the two things which artists love. One is, of course, they want to earn money, but I think the more important is how to become successful. I think Spotify...
Aren't they the same thing?
Sorry?
Aren't they the same thing?
Well, I think you can say the same thing for an upcoming artist. If you ask them what you want, I think they will ask for fame first.
Okay.
And I think the important part for them is to get discovered first.
Gustav, how unique is India? In my introduction, I said that India makes all giant companies behave differently or have to adapt or innovate for India. I mean, on the pricing front, we saw the mini, the mini subscription, the Spotify Premium Mini, right? What are the kind of innovations Spotify has had to do for India, and how different is India from the other markets that you are present in, or the leading markets that you have?
Yes, actually India has become one of our leading markets now 4 years into our India journey, which is a phenomenal testament to the opportunity in the market and how well we've gone after that opportunity. And I'd say that...
When you say leading markets, would you be able to qualify that? Are you saying in terms of the number of subscribers?
Engagement and number of users and sort of how important it is for creators around the world. So India is definitely a key focus market for us globally, which is why we are investing in the market and we have global teams come here all the time. So when I look at India, I look at a couple of things that are unique. First of all, we should remember that India is not one market. There are many Indias, and it's as multifaceted and diverse like Europe within one country. And obviously, we have to think about that differently when we develop our product, when we look at our marketing initiatives and our content initiatives, so that we can cater to all the cultures and demographics that we have inside of India. So that's one thing that is unique, that we have had to adapt the product. We've had to look at holidays and cultural moments that are different in India compared to other markets, and build unique content and marketing experience to cater to that. Film music that we talked about just now is another area which is unique to India, so we have to think about how that impacts how people search and discover music on the platform and how they want to listen to that. So India is unique, and we've had to adapt the product. And as you mentioned, premium...
Is it on the pricing front mostly, or is it also on the product front?
No, it's also on the...
both?
Yeah, exactly. It's also on the product front. So our free version in India is a unique product that we have for India, which is different from what it looks like in the rest of the world. So that is a unique aspect of what we needed to do to be successful in India. Then when it comes to how language works inside of the product, how search works inside of the product, those are unique to India as well. But when it comes to the monetization and premium side, it's true that we had to look at how Indian consumers behave and pay for things online, and we had to adapt anything from what's included in our premium packages, how you sell those, and also how we enable commerce and transactions on the platform. So all those things are things we had to develop specifically for India. And what's also interesting is that India is now serving as a role model for many other emerging markets around the world, because we made the investments here, and see as we go to other markets in South Asia, in the Middle East and Africa, we can bring our learnings from India into those markets.
And these product innovations, are they happening in India, or they're happening wherever you're, in Sweden or in the US? Where are they happening?
Yeah, it's a combination. So obviously it originates here, because here is where we have the market knowledge, the consumer insights, as well as the creator insights. But in terms of our product development from a computer technology perspective, it's mostly happening in Europe and North America, although we have team members all around the world now, especially since the pandemic, where people people are sort of working more remotely and working from anywhere.
Yeah. Pandemic cues me to a question that I'll put to both of you, but starting with you, Amar. And that is, what was, we saw in India and of course globally, the kind of adoption that streaming saw in terms of subscribers, video streaming. Did that bear out for audio streaming as well and for Spotify in the Indian context? And then I'll come to Gustav for the global one.
Yeah, no, in fact, the last 2-3 years, I think, have been tough, for businesses. But I think in our industry, I think at least from where we operate, I think the growth has been quite phenomenal for us. And so if you look at overall last 2 years, we have probably grown around 3 times of the overall user base in the market. And I think that's probably happened because we have been very actively reaching out to consumers, and we have been reaching out to artists. During this pandemic time, they actually found that it was much easier to produce music through audio and then kind of distribute it around the world. If you look at the past of many years back, I think there used to be a little bit of video-driven music in India. Maybe the film music was one of the reasons. But I think the artists started bringing more audio-first initiatives out there in their mindset. I think a lot of artists diversified from, from film music to film music stopped a bit. They diversified to their own music as such. And if you look at some of these artists, they're today releasing music outside of their own film music that they do. So that actually increased that number. And then I think the big change that happened is that as Spotify has actually gone down to different languages, so we have been focus on making sure that we try to cater to India, to the diversity of India.
Globally, how did the pandemic affect user growth for Spotify, for all the markets that you look at?
Yes, exactly. So when we look at user behaviors pre-pandemic, Spotify was primarily an app and an experience that people used during commute. So it was a lot of mobile use case. You had headphones on while you were commuting back and forth to work, which was life as we knew it before the pandemic. Yeah. During the pandemic, as all of that got disrupted, people started consuming Spotify on many other platforms because they were at home during the pandemic. So you would see things like smart TVs and home speakers and laptops and other consumption devices started gathering much more speed.
And that's a pandemic
That was a pandemic development. Whilst before you could see in our data that consumption was really high in the morning as people were commuting to work, then it was slower during the day. It was much higher in the evening for things like dinner playlists and party playlists and so on. But during the pandemic, all that got smoothed out into a very, very different consumption rhythm.
So was it evenly spread out through the day?
Much more evenly across the day, much more evenly across the 7 days a week compared to what we had before. And if you look at now post-pandemic, you see a combination of how it used to be pre-pandemic, but also how it was during the pandemic.
So it's not reverted back fully to
it has not at all.
Pre-pandemic patterns.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a new world, which I think reflects of the much more flexible way of. Many people have a hybrid work mode. They work from the office a few days a week. They work from home some days a week. And that reflects in our data and consumption.
So, Amarjit, give me a sense of how India is working out for Spotify, because I was reading some data which seemed to suggest that, the bulk of Spotify's revenues globally come from the subscribers, right? In India, does it bear out that trend, or is advertising your mainstay here?
No, in India, if you look at, we just came in about
because I have to confess
back
on television that I'm a free listener. I'm not yet a premium subscriber.
No, that's great. I think because if you look at Spotify
so
model,
how typical am I?
No, you're among many users in this market. That said, I think India has always been a free market in the beginning in listening to music. Piracy has been huge. So I think Spotify has just come in, 3.5 years back. So what we're trying to do is first help building the habits, I think, in the market. I think that's very critical out there. Globally, I mean, obviously, we are more leaning towards subscriber revenues versus our ad revenues. But in India, we have both strong streams moving in the market right now, and the free platform gives us a chance to do advertising, and the subscriber platform allows us to kind of generate.
So is the lion's share advertising revenue?
At this stage, I can't share exact numbers, but we are pretty strong on both numbers.
If advertising revenues are something you rely on quite a lot in India for Spotify, what do you have to say to advertisers? What does Spotify or what does digital audio streaming offer? I mean, can it offer brand building work? Can it, opportunities? What does it offer? And why should I, if I were a media buyer, spend on Spotify? Come on, you use this to make your pitch.
So first of all, I think the number one reason people invest out there is anybody else investing out there. I think I can assure you that in the last few years, about more than 300 brands across the best of brands in this country have been advertising, have been on Spotify. And not only been on Spotify, they are actively, continuously being there, and they're increasing their spend on Spotify. Why? Because we offer an experience like nobody else, because it's an audio story platform. So the immersive experience of a listener while going on a walk and listening to a music and then hearing an ad is a kind of there's undivided attention to the brand's recall value.
Right.
So I think it's an amazing place for brand building. And I think most of the brands that are working with us are looking at audio as a way to build their brand.
And is it about reach right now? Is it about segmenting? Because I saw, I think on the Spotify newsroom, Argentinian women and what they watched, what they heard, right? What the songs they heard. So is it, what are you offering advertisers as unique?
Yeah, the number one, I can tell you, the number one thing that most advertisers in India look for, I think if you look at audience, is young audiences. They want to focus on the Gen Zs and the people who are, youth. India is a youth market, but if you look at Spotify, demographic user base and all that, we are predominantly, a lot of young audience comes to Spotify. Because if you look at early adopters, people who decide and make decisions, brands want them.
Yeah.
And youth is definitely one of those big this thing. Like we say, people, even the kids who are sitting in the back of the car, they make decisions. So the young generation is on Spotify.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to have to ask you to pause because we're going to have to take a commercial break. But when we come back, we're going to be talking about all the other content that's available on digital audio streaming. And we're going to be starting with podcasts. Stay with us. Back in a minute. Welcome back. You're watching Media Dialogues in 2023, and I'm talking today to Gustav Gyllenhammar. He's the Vice President for Markets and Subscriber Growth, and Amarjit Singh Batra, General Manager, South Asia, Middle East, and Africa for Spotify. Gustav, podcasts, I was reading a tweet by one of your colleagues about some kind of pessimism about the future of podcasting in the US market. And of course, India, the same rules don't apply because podcasts haven't yet broken out here. But what can you tell us about podcasting? Because, we know that in the US, I think around 2014 or so, 15 with Serial, there was this big breakout. We now even have shows like Only Murders in the Building, which are tributes to podcasts, right? So what is happening on podcasts?
Yes, I think we're still only in the infancy of the podcast growth and industry globally. What we're seeing is a combination of a number of macro trends happening at the same time. So you see analog audio is going to digital audio, linear audio is going to on-demand audio, and mass reach is going to more personalized audio experiences. And podcasts sit at the intersection of all these three trends. And we see overall revenue and generation going into podcasts is growing very, very rapidly. And we see that not just in our developed markets, but also in emerging markets such as India, in Indonesia, and also in Latin America. And Latin America is a market where we have a lot of similarities to what's happening in India now, is what happened in Latin America over the last couple of years. So back to your question about monetization. When we launched in Latin America, we also saw a similar situation to what we saw when we launched in India, that predominantly we had free user growth and not so many subscribers initially. But if you then fast forward to where Latin America is today, you see almost the same conversion rate from free to paid as we see in Western Europe and North America. And there are no reason that over time we could get to the same development also here in India.
I did a show on podcasts with your colleagues and some of the top 10 podcasters that you have on your list. What do you think will create a breakout moment for podcasts in India?
Yeah, I think I'm a huge believer in podcast. I listen to it, and I think that there is an opportunity where I think, which Gustav mentioned, it's at infancy. So India is even at a better stage right now because I think globally, I think this medium is going to expand. If you look at India's true connection to audio, I think the true connection to audio comes generations, thousands of years back when people used to tell stories from grandparents to kids. So I think if you look today also, I think people actually consume audio a lot. Even if you're sometimes looking at a video platform, sometimes I think you are actually not looking at it. You're actually listening out there. So I think
YouTube songs.
Different platforms. And I think the opportunity to actually be audio only, and I think which Spotify is focusing on, I think that is huge. I think the things that we need to do, I think as a whole ecosystem, I think to work on it, is how do we enable more and more people to become podcasters? Because this is an area where Spotify is investing heavily. We have kind of a tool called Anchor, which actually has allowed people to create products, sitting at home through their mobile phone, create a podcast and distribute and even interact with other people in different cities and create a podcast together. Now that seamless and easy way of building a podcast, I think is the first step that I think Spotify took many years back. But now I think what we have seen is over the last few years, and if you look at the Wrapped also, there are a lot of interesting podcasters who are coming. People who have voices and people who have expertise and people who are within a certain culture. They want to share about their stories. They want to share about their culture. They want to share about their expertise. And I think that piece is now slowly building up. Indian voices, I think across the world will get a bigger watch because today it's not about Indian users. We have 450, 60 million users around the world. Indians speak English, very well. I think a lot of our content is in English. So I think the voices of India.
A global audience could be available to
it's sitting, waiting out there to kind of a show. So if people who are listening to this show and want to become podcasters, I think the time is now. Because that's the time to start podcasts and we are here to support them.
Audiobooks?
Yes, definitely. Yes. As you look at the vision that we have as a company is to really be a groundbreaking pioneer within all verticals of audio. And while we started in music and logically continued with podcasts, audiobooks has been the vertical which we most recently have invested into. And we're off to a strong start in our English language primary market, the US, the UK, Australia, and so on. But we're hoping that over time we'll be in many more markets around the world because we see an insatiable appetite among consumers to consume that type of audio.
How far is it for India? Because, Amar just talked about the storytelling tradition that we have over the centuries. Audiobook seems to fit right in, isn't it?
Yes, similar to...
Any announcement you're going to make for us?
Similar to us taking some time to move into music and launch in India. We want to do launches when we feel like we have a product that is really compelling for the market. So we have no announcement for you today about audiobooks.
Slow and steady.
But when we launch, we want to launch something that's really attractive to both the creative industry in India as well as consumers in India.
I'm going to sort of get to wrapping up the show, but a quick question. We know that globally Spotify has still not turned in a profit. It's clearly investment mode and growing. Given that in the last year we saw this really hard pushback from Wall Street to entertainment giants, which were focused on growth and not so much on unit economics and the bottom line, there's been a pushback. Do you have anything that you can share with me on how Spotify is dealing with this issue?
Yes, we have a very long-term perspective on our business opportunity, and some of our viewers here may have seen the Investor Day we did last year when we talked about the opportunity for Spotify to 10x our revenue over the next decade into a $100 billion company. And we think that there are investments needed to get there. And if you look on a unit economics basis in markets where we have been present a long time, it's looking really compelling already today. So it is the investment that is sort of fueling this. And we will continue to make the right investments for the long term, while obviously being very frugal and cautious about sort of how we spend our money.
Amarjit, India seems to, Gustav, we just heard him say that, and we've heard Spotify Global Management talk also about how India is a market that they want to get right and they are invested. So what are the pressures that you feel leading the Indian market, given that profitability is not right up there, is it? At this point of time.
I think the good part about India is that I think since the time we've come in, Daniel Lake, our founder, I think he's He's mentioned we are here, we are looking for a long term in India. We are not, you see, and I think that's a very, very bold and, like visionary statement to make, I think, and Gustav and myself and everybody leaders who are working on India, I think we are living with that vision that we are here for the long term. So I think we don't look at the short terms, ups and downs. I think we are here to build it brick by brick. And I think the question here is ultimately what are we here for? We're not representing our numbers or bottom line alone. We are also representing the industry. Because this market, which is an amazing market, and I think probably the biggest, potential market from the music perspective and the language and diversity that we have, I think hasn't seen the potential of a streaming platform of the size of what Spotify can work together. So I think we are looking to create that magic. And I think when we're looking to create magic, I think they will be obviously looking to kind of go deep into it. And I think good thing is that kind of a, backing I always have from Gustav and everybody at the senior leadership at Spotify. Yes, of course, we will work towards making sure that we are, moving faster and maybe better. But I think we're all together in this, for long term.
Final question to each of you. I know that Spotify Wrapped this year made available this feature about what does your music taste and playlist say about your personality. What's yours, Gustav?
It's a discoverer.
I'm actually a discoverer also.
Well, good team members, isn't it, then, on the same path of discovery in this Indian market. Thank you, Gustav. Thank you, Amarjit. Lovely talking to both of you. Thank you very much for watching. Catch another conversation on Media Dialogues, if you want to know about the business of brands. See you next week.